Outdoor Pursuits is offering about once a week, and most of them are free, but donations are always welcome. And I see that we had a few contributions come in for tonight's session, so thank you very much. And let's see, and then as we go through the presentation, in Zoom, there are several functions that for a lot of you, they appear like at the bottom of your Zoom window that involve muting and unmuting. And we will have a Q&A session at the end, but in the meantime, you can use your chat button on the Zoom window to type in questions if you wish. And Matt is going to monitor that chat. And if there's anything it looks like, you know, is still a question we haven't answered along the way, he'll ask that of the panelists at the end. And then you'll be able to come on at the end too if you want to ask a question. There's another function of Zoom that allows you to raise your hand. And I think it's under the reactions. If you have a little reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom window, that's one way to do it. And Matt will keep an eye on those as well.
Jeff, did you mention to prevent any echoing, I will try to keep everybody muted, but the speaker. If we don't have everyone muted, it often echoes. And so I'll be monitoring that. Don't be offended if I mute you.
Yeah, and then we also want to avoid ringing doorbells and barking dogs and all the other things that you all probably have gotten familiar with over the past 10 months in doing so many Zoom calls. But to start us off, we have Lisa Darris with us. She's the Executive Director of Outdoor Pursuits, and she's going to announce a couple things, and so I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Okay, I think you guys can hear me. My picture's up under Lisa, Gardener Girl, but my voice is coming over off of COP. It's a long story. Sorry about the technical challenges here, but I wanted to just give everyone Someone muted me. Can you all hear me now? Okay. All right. I wanted to give just a preview of next week's session. We've been starting these sessions earlier in January, and we've been having them weekly. So thanks for joining us for tonight, and for those of you who've joined us for a few other sessions earlier in the month. Next week's session is an exciting one. We actually have over 300 people signed up for it. And it is the Ohio to Erie Trail. Anything you wanted to know about it for planning a multi-day trip on that 326 trail that goes through the state of Ohio. Last year, the trail saw very high numbers of folks, of course, who were looking to do something fun outdoors and somewhat safe in a pandemic environment. And this season, we'll probably see those numbers as high again, in part because of the pandemic, but also I think people have found, have discovered the trail and really found enjoyment through it, especially multi-day trips, whether it be self-supported. We'll be talking about camping, as well as the support that different vendors can help with along the trail, including hotels and shuttles and things like that. So hopefully you'll join us next week as well. That's on the 27th at 7 o'clock. And that's all I have. So I'm going to turn it back to Jeff.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll introduce our speakers. And one of our speakers works in the evening and can't be here tonight, Larry Graham. But Larry and I went out this past Saturday and shot a video, and Larry has a lot of experience in cold weather cycling and a lot of great tips. And you should be able to see a photo on your screen of a very icy Larry after a ride earlier this month. And but what I'm going to do with Larry, since we have video, I'm going to, as we go progress through the topics, I'm going to show a little video clip of Larry talking about that topic. And then our panelists will then follow up with their observations and expand on what Larry says, offer their own tips, and then, like I say, we'll go through these topics, and we'll probably be about close to 90 minutes total, but we will take a break toward the middle. We'll take like a 5-minute break and let everybody get a refreshment. But so let me switch over to Larry's video, and then what you'll see is each segment of the video ends, the screen will go black for a second while I transition out of the video. So let's see how it goes. Oops.
Hi, I'm here with Larry Graham, and we are at the bike station depot in uptown Westerville on a 31-degree morning with a little bit of snow. And Larry is going to tell us all about cold weather riding and his strategies and for it. And so Larry, where are you headed today?
Well, it's just a normal Saturday for me. I'm going to head north, probably to Sunbury. 25 to 50 miles is my normal winter riding distance. Although sometimes I'll stretch it out to 100 kilometers. And if it's going to, if I'm lucky enough to get a nice winter day, maybe I can sneak in a century.
And, tell us a little bit about your cycling background overall, and also a little bit about the types of winter riding that you do.
So I've been adult cycling for 32 years. I started out duathlons, a run, bike, run. Although I found pretty quickly that I was a better cyclist than a runner. So, and then the progression is discovered the Westerville Bike Club. Started doing club rides, then century rides. Then I was invited to a really long ride. It was going to be 125 miles. And that's when I discovered a French type of quick, semi-self-supported, quick touring, if you will, called randonneuring. There's some rules to it, but they have distances up to 1,500 kilometers, 2,000 miles. So I got involved in that, and then that led to me wanting to break a cycling record. 24-hour record, which led me to start riding recumbents. And that actually progressed into, I was a factory sponsored recumbent racer for 24-hour races. I have a national championship. But then as I got older, okay, the racing was all encompassing, so I retired from racing and went back to randonneuring and touring with my wife. I wanted to make cycling more of a lifestyle. So when I got transferred to Findlay, Ohio, and I have an apartment there, not too far from work, I decided that I would commit myself to cycling to work and back every day. I didn't have anything else to do because I work a 4-on 4-off schedule, so I was stuck there for 4 days. What else is there to do but work and ride my bike?
Okay, if everybody can hear me now, that was Larry Graham, and now we'll introduce our live panelist. We'll start with Bill Dilts, and Bill, tell us a little bit about about what you do, just kind of overall with cycling and your background.
Okay, well, I've been biking pretty much since my 5th birthday. I got my first bike and kind of took off, and it's always been, to me as a kid, a way to escape, and pretty much the same thing as adult. Unlike Larry, I've been pretty much just an amateur, have fun kind of cyclist. I've never competed, never done anything on a very high cycling competitive level. Just it's all been for fun. About 10 years ago, I started cycling on the club level and done a lot of group rides. Probably my last two memorable rides was with Larry. We did the DC to Pittsburgh ride on the C&O and the Gap trails. And then last summer I did the Ohio Erie Trail, actually from Cleveland to Cincinnati in 4 days. So I've done that. And then like Larry, I also commute pretty much every day. I do have some limitations. I'm not out there every day like he is, but I do a commute. It's about 7.5 miles. So I get in 15 a day on my commutes, and then try out to go out and ride as much as I can year round.
Okay, and next up is Meagan. I'm pronouncing that correct, right? Right, and Meagan Gehrke, and tell us about what you do with cycling.
So, hi everybody. So I got into competitive cycling about 5 years ago when I first moved to Columbus. I worked from home at the time, and when you work, nobody tells you that when you work from home, you don't really make any friends because you don't go out and meet coworkers and meet people. So I joined the Lady Nar Shredders as just a way to kind of connect and make some friends. And 5 years later, it's turned into just this wonderful competition and lots of great friends and great experiences. I got into gravel racing in 2018, which I've really latched onto, and it's just opened up this whole new world of cycling for me that I'm really enjoying. I did a lot of road racing in the beginning, a lot of criterium racing, but I am leaning more towards the longer endurance distances lately. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is getting prepared to, last year I broke the women's world record for crossing Ohio west to east, and my plan is to establish 3 more in this year in 2021. So a lot of training involved with that.
Okay, great. And then our final live panelist is a fellow named Jim Silcott. And Jim, I didn't know prior to this, but I've kind of followed him for years. There was a local website called RideNet, in which riders just enter their own rides, and it tallies up the miles and the days of riding and the days of commuting for you. And I've been looking at the site for, I guess, probably 10 years. And Jim Silcott's name is like always, if not at the top, near the top, particularly in terms of days commuting. And of course, RideNet is kind of predates Strava and some of the other services that people use now, but there's still maybe a couple dozen people who still enter their data there regularly. And so as you can see from the screen grab, this is for 2020, and Jim is right up there at the top, in number of days ridden, 234, and it looks like 232 of those were commuting days. And then they have a little profile of Jim too, and then kind of there's a list there. I don't think it's been updated in a while, but it shows just sort of day by day, when they rode, and kind of weather conditions and any notes that people want to put there. So like I say, this is kind of the kind of old school Strava, and it's still it's pretty neat, and people still use it. And so Jim, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thanks. I feel like I'm kind of lightweight of this group. I've been in education. I'm in my 42nd year as a teacher, and most of the time as a principal when I work, sometimes 7 days a week. And so riding to and from school is a great way to start and end the day. I am not fast. I am a slow rider, and I don't care. That's fine. A lot of people pass me, and I just wave to them. But I really enjoy riding. I've also at the past summers, except for this last summer, tried to do a summer trip every year, and I've had the privilege of riding in 5 continents, including about 4 years ago, I rode in Ghana in Africa, which was a very exciting trip. But had the privilege of one of my daughters living in Australia, so I got to go there a number of times and ride in Australia, and ridden in Europe. Not done South America yet, but for me, it's all about just a way to start the day, a way to end the day, and the cold weather can be a little daunting when you first get up in the morning. It's like, oh my gosh, do I really want to get in this? But I've never been disappointed after a ride, except for last spring, and I would have had more days. I got hit by a blue van last spring, the blue van was making an illegal turn on Summit and Chittenden, and so if you see a blue van out there, be careful. But it broke my collarbone, and luckily I'm back riding again. But it's fun, and I've been riding pretty much all the years I've been in teaching. In fact, I even had a 2-year stint. I was principal in Bermuda, and I got to ride in Bermuda, which was very interesting. So I'm looking forward to hearing from this very distinguished panel, and I'll contribute whatever I can to add to the information.
Okay, great. And yeah, as you can tell from our panel, what I really like about this group is just a lot of, I guess you would say, diversity in the sense of the types of writing that they do, and sort of, and why they're doing it. And so our we'll kind of segue now into a little bit more specific about the winter writing. And I'll let Larry Graham put him back on the video again and tell you about how he approaches writing outdoors in the cold and the snow.
Let's see, and then as far as the cold weather riding, describe some of what I know you do a variety of types of rides, but what are the ones that you're most involved in, I guess?
So the randoneering and the 24-hour racing, for that matter, is whatever the weather was. And so, like other people will tell you in this webinar, that if you're going to race in it or go to an event in it, you need to train in it and ride in it. If it's raining, snowing, cold, windy, where normally in my earlier cycling career, I was like a lot of other people, like, oh, that's too nasty to ride today. So like today, to me, it's a perfect day to ride, other than the roads are a little wet and salty because I'm in Westerville. But the temperature, 30 degrees, a little bit of wind is comfortable. And the way you get comfortable is having the right clothing, having the right mindset. If you were just have been on the trainer all winter so far, and you just say, well, I'm going to go out today, it's 30 degrees, you're probably not going to have the right equipment, you're not going to have the right shoes, you're not going to have the right clothing, you're not going to be acclimated to 30 degrees. Just as if I was to go to Florida tomorrow and it's 80 degrees, I'm going to suffer in the heat because I'm not acclimated to it. And that's what a lot of commuters will tell you, and I'm a commuter. I have commuted every day for about 6 or 7 years in Northwest Ohio, where it can be very much a challenge, is that I don't get up and look outside or look at the weather and decide, well, maybe I'll drive to work today. It's what do I need to wear? What do I need to put on? I have a wide variety of clothing, gloves, helmets, and to help me achieve riding every day.
Okay, and is everybody hearing that okay? Panelists, can you give me a thumbs up if the audio on the video is coming through all right? And okay, so Bill and Megan and Jim, jump in there. What are your some of your specific thoughts on winter riding and specifically, and what motivates you to do it?
Well, I'll say that I have a very similar view of if you're going to race it, train in it. You know, there's nothing worse than showing up race day and it's pouring rain, or if you do a gravel race in the beginning of the year and there's a foot of snow, you know, that feeling of unpreparedness, I think, is what motivates me to go outside and just train in all the different elements. I don't like surprises. I don't like not knowing if my gear's going to work, if my tires are going to work, if you know, my nutrition's going to work. So I work really closely with Kristen Arnold and Source Endurance to make sure that my schedule includes several hours outside, no matter what, all year round. And I do some commuting as well, like leading up to a major event. I'll ride to and from work, putting in maybe about, what is it, 26 miles, which really just helps with my current schedule, kind of sneaking those miles in. And I think that another thing that drives me to ride outside in inclement weather is some of the best time to get a bike fit is in the winter. You know, not a lot of people are thinking about going out and getting a bike fit and at that time. So and then there's not a lot of events going on either. So being able to get that bike fit, and then you have to go ride the bike to see if the fit is right. So Eric Peters, who fits out of Paradise Garage, he'll do like a tune-up fit, but it's only within a certain amount of time. So I have to like get my fit, go ride my bike. Oh, there's a foot of snow outside. Well, guess I'm riding my bike because I got to see if this fit work. So those are the things that motivate me, is just trying to be prepared for the events coming up, and not going to let the weather slow me down.
I think the biggest challenge is, again, being prepared, as Larry said, with your clothing. And for me, you know, I commute about 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I'm not getting home or not commuting back till 6 o'clock at night. The weather could be very different in the morning and the afternoon. So it's all about the layering and being able to maybe wear extra layers in the morning and not so much in the afternoon, or it might be dry in the morning and raining like crazy in the afternoon. And so you just need to, again, be prepared and realize that once you get going, you are, as cold as that first couple minutes is, you are going to warm up. Except for me at my age, the extremities, my hands and feet get a little cold. We'll talk later about, ways to mitigate that. But it's just being prepared and knowing what to expect out there. And as Larry said, having the different clothes and equipment to deal with that.
Yeah, Jim, one of the best advices I ever got was if you start a ride and you feel warm enough at the start of the ride, you're probably going to be too hot as you get into the ride. So you should feel a little cold. And probably my biggest motivation when I started riding in the winter was just the sheer fear of having to start back up in the spring. And the nice thing about the winter is riding through the winter is you don't have to, yeah, there's some extra stuff you start doing in the spring, but you don't have to reacclimate yourself to where's this, where's that, you're already doing it. I kind of got into it a little bit by accident as we got into the fall one year. I just, it got down to 50 degrees and I thought, well, what do I need to ride in the 50s? And so I went out, got some knee warmers, some extra gloves and whatever. And then the next thing was, well, there's the 50s. What do I do for the 40s? And then you just work your way down. And, everybody's going to be different, whether it be your age, your body type, or your personality. Some people are going to wear more than others. Some people are going to be less. And you just kind of teach yourself as you're working into these different zones of what you need. And be frankly with you, before I started riding, I didn't know what the 40s felt like, what the 50s felt like. I never really cared. Just throw on a coat and went outside. Go outside in all these temperatures and get a mental picture of what it feels like, and then you'll start learning what works for you. And that's where I've come from.
Okay, great. And let's see, and then we'll go back to Larry again, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his bike and some of the gear, non-clothing gear that he uses for winter riding. And so let's take a listen.
Example, this is my home winter bike, and it started life as a Cirrus flat bar hybrid. I bought the frame and fork for like 50 bucks. I put some Tiger components on it, 10-speed, compact double. And the biggest thing is, I don't care that it gets salty or corrodes because it's not my primary bike. You also notice that I have full coverage fenders. Some randomers will actually have a flap that goes all the way down to almost to the surface of the road. That protects your feet. It actually keeps the bike cleaner. Full coverage rear fender, so that salt, slush stays off the bike, stays off of your feet, stays off of your lower legs. If you can keep your feet dry, you're going to be much more comfortable.
Okay. What do you all think?
Well, I'm a self-confessed bike hoarder. I have several bikes here, and shamefully, I won't go into the number here, but my main commuter is a Cannondale touring bike, and I use it for my main commuting. It's set up with racks. I'm running 700 by 38s on it as far as the tires. We'll get into a little bit more about that. And it's got a rack with a pack on the back, and it's not a real fast bike, but it's nice and safe and steady. I have a second commuter bike that I have the fenders on, like Larry's talking about. And then I have a third commuter bike that I have studded tires on, and Larry's going to talk about that a little bit later, but it does help me get through the ice. And as a matter of fact, this Monday and Wednesday, I had to pull the studded tired bike out and ride it. And it is a lot of work. And then for fun last year, my fun bike, not a commuter, but I have a Specialized Diverge, and I'm just having a fun time with it. I put some 650B wheels on it and just doing some off-roading with it. So that's the setup I use.
Yeah, I don't know if you fully described your daily commuting, but I think you leave, about 4 o'clock in the morning. You live in, Bill's from Gehrke, but splits time with a second home in Hayesville up in the Mansfield area. And so about 4 in the morning, you work in Ashland. So you make a ride of about 7.65 miles, country roads, middle of the night, coldest part of the night probably, to Ashland. And then in the afternoon, turn around and come back home. So yeah, that's pretty, I imagine you see some things out there that you got to wonder if you're asleep and dreaming.
Well, yeah, and the beauty of this place and why we're relocating up here eventually is that, I pull out of the driveway and I'm right on a country road. I don't have to drive right away to get away from traffic. I'm out here, and most of the time going to work at that time, I don't even see one car for 7.5 miles. So it's real nice. And even coming home, there's one busy stretch, and the rest of it's just all country roads. So it is heavenly.
Okay.
I confess I've got one bike. It's a 20-year-old Airborne Titanium. It was made at the for a couple of years. They were building these bikes at the old Huffy plant in out of Springfield, and I bought that, and I keep it nice and tuned up with Johnny Velo bikes here in the Clintonville area. I don't use the fenders, but I clean my bike probably after every ride, particularly during this time of year. And just get thicker tires, the Gator tires, and it seems to work fine for me. But I really like my Titanium.
So the bike that I have been primarily riding is my Specialized Crux from my cyclocross days that I've transformed into a gravel rig. Well, turns out it's also really good at road riding when the roads aren't the best. Um, I have the Alluvium Pro gravel tires on there, which are really, they have like these scales down the middle. Um, and the way that they're organized, it's really fast rolling on pavement, but it's also got knobs kind of off to the side. So if you get, into like a little bit of off-road or some cornering with a little bit of snow or something, it's really grippy. I haven't had any issues with those tires, and I got the biggest ones I could because to me, the bigger the better for winter riding. It just gives more comfort and support. I definitely have at least a rear fender. I got some from a company called Barfly Bike, which I really like because they attach to the rear chain stays instead of the seat post. So that kind of frees up my seat post to have an additional light on there instead of having that real estate for a fending mount. But I'm still working out which size I want. My latest ride, it got a little soggy and it was below freezing. So my tailbone got a little bit cold. There's a block of ice back there. So I highly recommend having a fender just in staying dry, which is a key component, I think, in some of the sub-freezing temperatures. What else? That's really it for the non-clothing supplies that I have. I like having the big tires, the fender, and then the cyclocross bike, which, I mean, you could use any bike, for winter riding. It's, just depends on what you're comfortable with.
Okay. Well, let's turn now to clothing. And we could probably do an entire 2-hour session just on clothing, but we'll try and hit the high points. But again, we'll see what Larry has to say.
You also notice that have bar mitts. These are actually the brand name bar mitts. There are some imitation ones that you can get from Amazon, but these are the actual bar mitts, and they work very well. A few years ago, I was doing a 600-kilometer ride in North Carolina. The temperature dropped unexpectedly, and I ended up with frost nip on all of my fingertips. So for me, not only do I have the bar mitts, I wear some cycling gloves underneath. I have to have these big lobster-style gloves. And that's just me. A lot of people who use the bar mitts use a much lighter glove. Other things is the physics of your body is that your body in the wintertime is going to keep your vital organs warm. So that's your brain, your heart, your lungs, kidneys, liver. So if you can keep your core and your head warm, your extremities are going to be warm too. A few years ago when I was doing a 24-hour race in of all places, Sebring, Florida, it got really cold in the 30s at night, and all of a sudden my feet were getting really cold, my hands were getting really cold, and all of a sudden my helmet got really tight. And I didn't understand what was going on. It's like I'm wearing this helmet all the time. What was happening is my body was sending all the blood from my extremities to keep my brain warm and keep my brain from freezing, so my head swelled. Oh, I have a big head anyway, but it got so that I had to stop immediately and get the helmet off. And as soon as I did, I went almost into convulsions of hypothermia. So what I have on here is just a windbreaker jacket that slows the airflow, but it's not like a raincoat that blocks the airflow because you need to stay dry. Under the jacket, I have a Pearl Izumi wool jersey. And under that, I have a base layer of another merino wool sweater. I just got this. These are 100% wool. I got them from Joseph A. Bank. It doesn't have to be cycling specific. Anything wool, the advantage is that if it gets wet, it still keeps you warm. Whereas a synthetic material, once it gets wet, it's going to get cold if there's any airflow on it. On my lower extremities, I have a pair of knickers. Unfortunately, these are Ibex knickers that they don't make anymore, but there's a wind protection on my knees, and under that I have full-length leg warmers. My feet I have wool socks, and I have a pair of winter cycling boots. Like most people, when you see the cost of them, it's like, oh man, do I really want some shoes that are that expensive that I'm only going to ride a few times? The advantage is if you, in the off season, sometimes you can find these used that people wore a few times and discovered the winter whiting really wasn't for them. You can get them for probably half price. These are 45 Norths. Specialized makes a set. Northwave makes a set. Shimano makes a set. Some people like those. The advantage to the winter boot is that you're not wrestling with those boot covers or shoe covers, and they're designed with some airflow. You think that you want your feet sealed, but when you do that, they sweat. And once your feet get wet, they're going to get cold. So you have to have some airflow. So my feet are not ever hot. They're always a little bit cool, but they stay dry. Therefore, I'm not really uncomfortable. And it's something that you have to get used to, just like getting used to riding when it's 90 degrees.
So no plastic bags.
Well, the plastic bag is in case of an emergency. My wife and I were doing a 200-kilometer ride in Arkansas a few years ago, and the weather wasn't what it was predicted, and we got halfway through and our feet were freezing, and we stopped at a Subway for lunch and we grabbed some sandwich bags, took our shoes and socks off, put the bags on, put the socks on, and it actually saved our ride. That is a good emergency tip, is plastic bags on your feet if you get out and oh my God, my feet are freezing. What you're doing is you're blocking the airflow. I mean, your feet are going to sweat, and you better be headed for home, but it will get you home.
There's a trade-off.
There's a trade-off to everything. Also, you notice that, I'm just wearing a beanie on my head. My commuter equipment in Findlay is actually, when it gets down to single digits, I have a downhill ski helmet made by Gehrke, but it has ear flaps and it has a vent on top that can control the airflow. The other thing is, if it gets down to single digits, I also have a pair of ski goggles, and I will cover every exposed piece of skin. In Findlay, my coldest commute of 5 miles, the air temperature was 12 below Fahrenheit. But Findlay is like one of the windiest places on earth, I think, and that's why they call it Flag City, I think, because the flags are always flying straight out. There's been commutes of when the temperature was negative 30 below wind chill factor, so you cannot have any skin exposed. And it's amazing. In Findlay, it's a grid system. I usually try to do a 10-mile route to and from work, but I have an emergency 3-mile route, and it's amazing how adventurous 3 miles can be when the weather is really challenging.
All righty. And I'll mention again, in that video when we shot it, it was about 30 degrees. And so that, with the layering and stuff that Larry had, that sort of what he would do at that temperature. How about the rest of you?
I think he nailed it on the head with a lot of the clothing choices. I mean, wool is your best friend in cooler temperatures. It holds 5 times its water weight and still feels dry. Even when it gets wet, you stay warm. I have a wool hat, a wool neck gaiter, a wool, undershirt, like wool liner, gloves, everything. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I have pretty much all Ibex, I think, at this point. I just really love the brand and their designs and stuff. It just works really well with my body. And then the wool socks, for sure, absolutely, 100% with the boots. I was the same way about the boots. I got really, really lucky and was able to snag a pair for like $50. And I am never letting those go, because that's like unheard of finding them at that price, but they are expensive. They really are. But I think since, when did the weather drop? For like a month, you know, every time I've ridden outside, I've used those boots. The last 2 years, that's all I've ridden in the winter is those boots. So you definitely get your money's worth out of
What? I'm sorry. What were the boots?
the winter riding boots. I have 45 North for the road style boots, and then I think my gravel style with the 2-bolt cleat is a Gehrke brand boot. And I use both of those regularly. It's just a thicker, instead of the regular cycling shoe, which they have a lot of vents, and I've never had any luck with finding a shoe cover that actually like is easy to put on and also keeps your foot warm. But the moment I switched to a winter cycling boot, it was a day and night difference, and I'll never go back. As for the outer layers and the tights, so I do have a tendency to overheat. So I love the wool for like base layering, the hat and the neck gaiter. But my other layers, I try to keep them as like thin and light as possible, but each layer kind of has a different technology or a different use. So for example, like all of my Machines for Freedom gear, the layer after the base layer is their long sleeve summer weight jersey, which also, even though it's a synthetic material, it's really good at being breathable and wicking away any extra moisture. After that, I have their Twilight jacket, which is their heavier zip up, and that is their windbreaker. So it's not very water resistant, but it does an excellent job at stopping that wind from reaching your core. And if your core stays warm, then your outer extremities stay warm. The final layer is a vest, and that is a waterproof and also windbreaking vest. So to me, the combination of being able to like wick the moisture away that you're creating, but also kind of block those outer elements without creating your own atmosphere is really, really important. I also use the bar mitts. I don't have the lobster gloves and the bar mitts because, again, my hands, I think, are the first thing to warm up. And you'll learn a lot about your body as you're going through and trying all these different clothings, and you'll figure out what stays warm, what stays cold, where you need to concentrate your efforts on. Are your toes the first thing to go? Maybe consider the winter cycling boot. Are your hands the first thing to go? Maybe consider the lobster gloves with the bar mitts. But I find that just, the Ibex liner wool gloves and the bar mitts are enough for me until it starts to get into the single digits. And that's when I go to maybe like a mid-weight glove instead. That's about it for me.
I would just add, I used the bar mitts for years, but this year I thought I'd give it a try. Electric gloves, the electric heated gloves. I spent about $65, and so far they've really helped. It's not the opposite of Meagan. My fingers and hands are the first to get really cold, and that's really made a difference to me this winter. The only downfall is that the charge for them, if you're going to take a really long ride, you need backup battery or something. But I just take them and charge them every night, and I have enough for the next day. But and then of course the layering is what you need. And of course I'm going to work, so I've got to be cognizant of what I'm wearing when I get to school in terms of taking stuff off and everything. I also do about an hour and a half of recess duty every day, and so that the cold weather riding helps me stand out in the playground for an hour and a half.
Yeah, one of the things that I have on right here, I use as a base layer that, speaking of work, I tend to go inside and outside a lot at work. So I actually just leave this bottom base layer on when I work, throw my work shirt over top of that, and it kind of works out. So that's one of the things I utilize this to keep on. Going back to the boots, another thing about work is Meagan talked about getting things on and off easy. I had one set of boots I was real happy with, but they were just a struggle to get on. And when you're putting boots on twice a day, ended up getting one. And by the way, I would probably size those boots out a little bigger than your normal cycling shoe, because you're going to want a little bit heavier sock. So that's what I found out, to get those on easier and off. As far as the upper body also, I found a real nice secret, since I leave really early in the morning, come home in the afternoon, is I put on what I think is going to work out real well. And then I put a real light wind jacket over top of that on the way to work. And then a lot of times I don't wear that on the way home, but that's just an extra thing. And then the same way with gloves, I'll have a heavier one on the way to work, and then I have the bag on my bike so I can switch those out. And then we didn't talk a lot about the head, but the balaclavas is a real nice feature to have. And I have a downhill section 1 mile into my ride, and it sometimes can almost split your brain. And so sometimes I'll take a cap, maybe something like this, and actually put it over top of the balaclava, and then I'll have it or the balaclava to wear home. And it just helps that first brain freeze on the way out. And then we started talking a little bit about moisture. You can also take something like this right here. You see it real well, but it is something that actually fits over top of your helmet. Now that can get hot, but when it's 30 degrees and raining, your head getting cold is another thing too. So there's a lot of experimenting with these kind of things, but those are just some of the secrets I've learned. And yes, 2 years with the shoe covers, and my 3rd year in getting those boots were the lifesaver. And the same thing with the bar mitts. If you're going to go down into the 20s, I like the idea of the heating gloves though. So some of the things I use.
Real quick, I just I think it was mentioned before. I think it was Larry mentioned it. He said another, and I just wanted to reiterate that you want to feel a little bit cold when you first start. You almost want to be thinking like, I want to put that extra jacket on, and then don't do it. Like every time I've done that, every time I've given in and been like, yeah, I'm gonna put that extra jacket on, I've regretted it. It's been too hot, and I've had to stuff it into, a back pocket. And then I look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame for, 60, 70 miles. And it's like, oh my God. But that being said, I do bring like an emergency windbreaker that folds up real small, and I can keep that in one of my frame bags, because you never know if, you need to stop and change a flat tire, or something is going to stop you. You don't want to get cold while you're stopped, because then just getting warm again is that much harder. And then I wanted to go back to my glove choice. I think the reason that I stick to thinner gloves also is not only my hands tend to get warm, but on a lot of the longer rides, I really struggled with the lobster gloves and opening up food and drinking, and that dexterity part of it. I don't like to stop and eat and all that stuff when I ride. So I like to keep moving, and you have to take, if you have a lobster glove, you have to take it off, and then you have to find your food, and then you have to eat it, and then you have to try to like balance and put the glove back on. So those are just things that I've learned through my years of kind of refining how I'm riding my bike competitively, at least. But commuting, yeah, my clothing choices are like way different, and both James and Bill have covered the commuting side of things extensively. So.
It's interesting you talked about warming up. I found my personal time is about 20 minutes. And the shame of that is my commute is 30 minutes. So it's always an interesting thing, is I just get warmed up, and then I'm home or I'm at work. But you'll find out where that point is like where, because a lot of times you'll think, oh boy, I made the wrong choice. I wait for it. Ah, there it comes. Especially with your hands. A lot of times they'll be cold. Once you get that blood flowing, then you're set for the rest of the ride usually. And when you do overdress, sometimes it's hard to take that outer layer off because place to put it, yes. And also then that's going to feel cold because you're sweating on the inside. You've started that moisture thing. So exactly, you want to feel cold when you start to ride.
Yeah, it's such a perplexing subject, really. And I've seen charts, that say when it gets to, this range of temperature, you add, you add arm warmers, or you add this and that, and work your way down. But like Meagan said, I think it's so highly individual, that, everybody's going to feel the cold differently. But what I always struggle with is, you can see, a forecast, it's going to be, say, 40 degrees outside, but there are so many variables as far as whether it's sunny, whether it's windy, how humid it is. And so it's like getting dressed is like the hardest part, because I'm trying to, account for all those variables, and because it really can affect each ride differently. But well, if everybody's okay, I think it'd be a good time to take about a 5-minute break, and then we can come back and catch a few more topics, starting off with staying safe, and just things that we need to be doing out there, on the bike to keep ourselves visible. And also too, a couple of people have mentioned, like when you have emergencies or flat tires, things like that come up. So we'll kind of get into that topic, but let's take a break here and return in about 5 minutes. Treacherous roads. And so let's take a listen to what Larry has to say.
Tell us about tires and some of the other, I guess, safety and visibility things that you're doing, on these winter rides.
So safety-wise, in the wintertime, vehicles are not expecting to see a cyclist. So you have to stand out. So, you know, I have this jacket is reflective in the day, in the nighttime. And here in Central Ohio, it's cloudy, a lot of times gloomy. So a headlight, especially one that can have a flash mode, and I run 2 taillights in case one battery dies out. So I have 2 redundancy. So 2 taillights.
Do the batteries seem to die out quicker in the cold weather? Or?
So yes. So on my commuter bike, I run a dynamo front hub. So it's a generator front hub. So I don't have to rely on batteries. Although I also run a battery taillight along with the dynamo taillight, flashing one, to again make myself more visible, because people in the wintertime driving are not expecting to see a cyclist. So the more you can make yourself stand out, as at any time of year, but particularly in winter when it's gloomy or it's dark, it's foggy or it's snowing, you have to make yourself known because they're not really expecting it. So today, you know, the temperature is right about freezing, but the ground is not cold. So today I don't have to worry about ice. You might be some slush or things, but as a racer, there's a dry line and a wet line. So today I'm going to make sure I take the wet line. You know, no sharp turns, gentle turns. In Findlay, you would think that we get a lot of snow up there, but actually we get a lot of ice. And in Hancock County in particular, they really don't do anything to the roads because their philosophy is that it will eventually melt. So if there is snow, it gets hard packed, it gets polished by the vehicles. And I have a second set of wheels that have steel studded tires that are amazing on ice, hard packed snow, refreeze, black ice. You would never know that you're on glare ice with the studded tires. And because I have them on a second set of wheels, it takes about 5 minutes to switch them back and forth. Some people say, well, why don't you just leave them on in the wintertime? Well, on dry pavement, they are so heavy and have so much drag that I think I figured out that it takes 30% more effort to go 20% slower. But the good point is, if you're running the studded tires, you will never be cold because you are working so hard to turn them. But if you're trying to commute every day, there's no substitute for having studded tires when it's icy, hard-packed snow. They're not that great in fresh snow because they want to dig down to the pavement, and sometimes the pavement, there's ruts and stuff in there. But luckily in Northwest Ohio, there's not a lot of snow like Northeast Ohio.
And what does fall just blows away.
Right.
Okay. Well, guys, what do you think?
Well, I can start off here a little bit. A couple of things that I use the same thing as Larry. As I mentioned, one of my bikes is set up with the studded tires. And I know when Larry told me about this a couple of years ago, I said, well, you're just crazy. You know, when it gets to be that bad, just stay off your bike. But it is interesting. The couple of days I had this week, the snow really wasn't that bad, but I'd have really felt unsafe taking the regular tires out. And so that's what I used. And then speaking of tires, and you know, this is kind of a new thing coming along in the technology, but you know, when I started, I thought a 25 millimeter tire was a wide tire, and now the skinniest tire I ride is 32. So we getting into, because of the disc brakes and all that, we're getting to where we can use fatter tires out there. It's a lot safer. And then also the other thing is air pressure. You know, I think, you know, grew up thinking that more air pressure was faster. And then we're finding out now that you can take that air pressure down and actually not lose that much speed, gain a lot of comfort, and also be a lot safer on the road with grip and everything. So I encourage people to experiment with some lower air pressure in your tires. And then the other thing Larry mentioned was a little bit, I don't know if you caught this or not, was the Dynamo Hub wheels. And he's actually built me a wheel. And I have 2 other bikes that actually have a generator wheel on the front, and I run front and back lights off of that generator. So I don't have to worry about batteries or getting charged. I also run some other lights on the bikes, but I know that I always have lights lit up on my bike with the Dynamo Hub and the lights on the bike.
So yeah, tires. There's actually going to be another webinar in about a week or two. You know how you mentioned that we could have a whole section just on clothing? Well, we're going to be talking for like 2 hours about tire pressure, and it's going to be wonderful. The wider, the better, in my opinion. On my, yes, I do run tubeless tires on my cyclocross bike. I love running tubeless just because if it has like a puncture or something, it kind of fills itself. But honestly, I haven't had a puncture yet. I think the tires I'm running, I just love them. They're super supple. In the rear, I'm able to fit, I think it was a 40 or 42 millimeter tire, Illuvium Pro, and then the front, there's not as much clearance on my cyclocross bike, so that one was a 38. Or no, it's the other way around. It was a 40 in the front and a 38 in the rear because there wasn't as much clearance in the back. But I've never run the pressure any higher than 40, even on a completely dry day, and I'll drop that when the conditions, gravel or road, get rougher. Gone all the way down to 30, I think. And I've found that there's more stability and that there's more grip and more rubber on the road does mean you go faster. It's more grab. I think I've never run studded tires before, so I can't speak to those. But I've had a lot of luck just with a cyclocross tire that has a smooth center and kind of flared knobs on the side. So that's what I've always run, and I've had a lot of success with it. Something that wasn't mentioned yet is reflective tape. And I never considered that until I did my west to east Ohio attempt, and that was actually a requirement to have if you were riding in any night conditions. And what I believe now is important to have reflective tape on is if your rear light does die or your front light does die, you have that reflective tape as backup so that cars can definitely see you. And another thing that crossed my mind a few days ago, as I had another cyclist ride in front of me at night. He had front and rear lights, but I still almost didn't see him because he didn't have any side-to-side visibility. And that reflective tape really kind of covers you, all around. It makes sure that your side is protected visibly, and then your front and rear is. I run 2 rear lights as well, only 1 front light, and I have aero bars on my cross bike because when I was training for Unbound Gravel, we thought it would be a good idea for me to be able to get off of my hands because we're expecting me to be on the bike for 20 some hours or a little bit less. And that takes up a lot of real estate. So I got this mount from Barfly Bike that holds your light on the underside and your bike computer on the top. And because my light is so close and it's up there, I can actually plug it into a battery that I strapped to my stem, so I can definitely keep that charged. And then the two tail lights, so that way when one dies, you can just click on the other and you don't skip a beat. I have a lot of other people who also swear by battery operated lights for that reason. If you're doing longer distances, you can't really stop and recharge a rechargeable light, but you can stop at a gas station and get a couple double A's and pop those right in, and then you've got a working rear light again. So and then I think turning was brought up. Just make sure that if you're out in slippery conditions or uncertain conditions that you're braking before the turn, so that way there's no forward momentum going the one way while you're trying to physically turn another way, and that could cause your tires to slip out. So make sure you're braking well before the turn, and then when you're actually taking the turn, you're not trying to be like a motorcyclist. You don't want to turn your bike and keep your body upright. At that point, you want to have very perpendicular thoughts, keep the bike upright and then kind of almost lean your body and turn the bike into the turn a little bit instead of leaning it. At least that's the success that I've had with dealing with kind of those shifty conditions. That's all I can think about right now.
I concur. I mean, I have 2 lights in the front, 3 lights in the back, and one of the lights in the back is a battery light. So that, again, for that very thing. I also have my reflective tape on my messenger bag, which I think helps. And for me, I ride in the city, and I'm riding on city roads. So for me, it's the road conditions are one thing, but it's the cars are the other thing. So the one thing that's not been mentioned is a good rear view mirror. I have one that it's attached to my wrist. It's out of Australia. It's called RearViz, and it's the best rear view mirror I've had because it sits there on your wrist. But it's really important to see what's coming behind you so you can prepare for it. And the last thing I'll say is, and I think it's important for all of us to know when our limits are. And my limit is I won't ride on ice. I applaud you guys who put those studded tires on and do it. But if I think it's icy, I'll take a pass. And my wife thanks me for that, I think. Though, maybe one day she'll encourage me to do that. But the cold, I'll ride in as cold as it can be. I'll ride in the rain, but if I think there's ice, particularly in the city, I tend to stay off the bike.
One thing I'll
And, that's the thing, Jim, too. I think we all need to make sure that we feel comfortable in whatever we're doing. Wind is another thing. Up here, Larry mentioned it in Findlay, but same thing up here. Like today, it was almost unsafe to be out. It's a nice, beautiful day, but we've got gusts of 30 miles an hour. And especially when it's coming from the side, you got to watch out. And then the other thing is just, especially in the winter, just realize that you're not going to run the speeds you do in the summer. I don't care how fast or how slow you are. And it may be disappointing to your ego, but when you go out, take your time. It's winter. Just be happy to be out there and be safe, and make sure, as Meagan was talking about in the turns and everything else, just take your time and be safe and get home safe.
Yeah, a lot of my decision making for where I ride too is heavily dependent on the weather. I still believe in if you're going to race in it, train in it. But if it's I'm sorry, but if it's 28 degrees and raining and nighttime, all 3 of those things, me personally, I'm not comfortable with that yet. So I'm still building up to that level of comfort. Or if it's, there's a foot of snow outside, I tend to lean more towards gravel riding than I do road riding. And if it's, I apologize for my cat, I'm sorry. And if it's, dry roads, but there's snow out, then I'm fine with a road ride. So I think just understanding your limits and being comfortable with your limits is important as well. And just test your gear. The last thing you want is to, hear about these great leg warmers or something, and then you don't test them until the event that's cold. And then it turns out they just don't stay up, and then you're freezing. Like, that sucks. And I've been in that situation. I've had people convince me that, oh, this is the best, you have to use it. And there was a couple times where I didn't use it up until the event, and it never worked out. And I hate that unpreparedness feeling. So any new gear you get, test it long before you actually need it in that temperature or in that event to see if it'll actually work.
One thing I'll mention too is when you're riding, particularly out in the country, just to be aware that during the winter, when after it snowed, and the roads get plowed, all that debris will be pushed over, onto the shoulder, and so that could be you could have a lot more risk of getting a flat tire, which you don't want in the cold, and so just to be careful about when you're riding in the shoulder to watch out for sharp stuff. And, okay, well, if we're ready to move on, I'll play Larry's next segment, was just some of his other tips on winter cycling. So let me get that started.
Well, show us too your bag on the front, your handlebar bag that I think is kind of a nice way to go for winter riding.
So today, this morning, if I'd gone out earlier, it was a little chilly and maybe, you know, as you can see, the sun's starting to peek out and the roads are going to dry and it's going to warm up. And maybe I overdressed a little bit and now I'm getting hot and sweaty. So the front bag allows me to have a second set of dry gloves, maybe some dry socks if I'm going to do a longer ride. And also I can take my jacket off and put it in the bag. Right now, we had some issues with the camera, but so I went home and grabbed another camera. But I have a set of gloves, my wallet, phone, and as it is necessary today, I have a mask in here if I have to go into a store. Same thing on my commuter bike. I have a handlebar bag that's easily removable, and it serves as my lunchbox.
Mm-hmm.
And also I run a pannier on the one side that has all my variety of clothes, extra gloves, extra hats, you know, because I work a 12-hour shift, the weather can drastically change from being nice to being horrible, or going from horrible to being nice, and you need to have, you know, variety of things to wear. And so the biggest thing that I would let people know of is that your winter riding, what you're wearing is moisture management, because if you get wet, you're going to be miserable. And so same thing with airflow. If there's no airflow through so wool breathes, the boots breathe, my gloves breathe a little bit, it helps me keep dry. I'm going to be warm as an 80-degree day, no, but I don't want to be, because as any expert will tell you, any winter activity, once you start getting wet and sweaty, you can cause problems. Example would be if I'm out on a 25-degree day and I'm really going hard, I'm overdressed, and I have a flat tire that I have to change. By the time I take my gloves off and by the time I change the tire, then my hands are going to be frozen and I'm going to be in big trouble. So that's another issue too to consider, is your tires. You know, we all want to go fast. We all want to, you know, the average speed, because we're posting to Strava or some other thing, and we're worried about people going to see that we had a 12-mile-an-hour average. But you have to have the mindset that that's not important. You're out there. The mental health, the physical health of being outside. For me, in my long-distance cycling, like I said before, this helps me prepare for that. You know, if you're crit racer, or you're going to be doing road racing in the spring, the indoor training is probably great for you, because you're being able to do intervals, you're able to do, you know, the actual training. You know, when I'm out riding, like today, I'm going to go 20 miles, 25 miles. I'm really not physically training. I'm just my mental health, keeping my base miles, my base intact, so that come spring, I'm not behind. You know, once the weather gets nice, then I'm physically and mentally prepared to do the harder training, to go to the hills, intervals, those kind of things.
Okay. Other insights that from our panel? I know, Meagan, you had mentioned in one of our emails that one of the things that you kind of take into account in cold weather riding is your nutrition and hydration, and sort of changing up, you know, on how you pursue that. Any tips for us?
Yeah, so I'm not a licensed dietitian or nutritionist or anything, but my fears of unpreparedness have forced me to experiment a lot. So what I found for nutrition is what works and tastes good in the summer might not necessarily work or taste good in the winter. Things happen like gels can freeze, your water bottles will freeze. The nozzle, the water just in the nozzle might freeze, and then you're trying to drink and it's like nothing's coming out and you're thirsty. So some things that I have found that have worked really well in the winter, but not necessarily in the summer, are like, chocolate chip cookies, because the chips don't melt anymore. So that's my favorite time to use those, as riding fuel. Or those orange slices that you can get at the drugstore for like $1, and there's like 100 in there. Those little gummies. I prefer those over like gummy bears or something, because the gummy bears will get really hard and really difficult to chew. The last thing you want to do, at least in competitive racing in the cold weather, is having to like gnaw on something while you're breathing and working hard and trying to focus. So I have found that those orange sliced gels work really well. Dates work really well in the winter versus the summer. I think that in the summer they're too sticky for me, but in the winter they're great, because it's just you put them in your mouth and then bite, chew, swallow, and you're done. And 2 of those is half an hour's worth of energy there. As for your water, I always put electrolytes in my water, and I usually put just a little bit more in the winter, because electrolytes are salt, and salt has a lower freezing temperature. So if you have electrolytes in your drink, it's not going to freeze as quickly. Another trick that I found that works, in my feed bags, I'll put the water bottles upside down. I won't necessarily do that in the bottle cages, because then all the mud gets on, the tip. But if you put the water bottles upside down, it's almost like that mass of water doesn't freeze as quickly as the little bit of water that gets trapped in your in the bite valve or in the nozzle. And I've also experimented with camelbacks and other like bladder hydration systems. I found that the bottles are just, they work the best. So the water will freeze in the hose unless you keep it close to your body. If you thread it up through and you keep it kind of almost under that underlayer, then the hose has stayed warm that way. So, and once again, just everybody's different nutritionally. So just make sure that you're trying things. I really like maple syrup in the winter, because it just tastes good. It doesn't freeze. And but in the summer, again, it's like it's sticky and it's too much. So what you find work in the summer might not necessarily work in the winter. So and you also, you still need to drink water while you're riding in winter. You can very easily fall into the trap of I'm not hot and I'm not sweating, so I must not need water. Well, you're still working. So I might not drink the full 20 ounces of water in an hour, but that might be over the course of an hour and a half. Versus I have some friends who, like, we get done with a 2 or 3 hour ride and they've had maybe about that much on their winter ride. And I'm just like, oh, how are you feeling right now? So I just like to make sure that, every half hour I'm taking a few sips or every 15 minutes even, I'm taking a few sips out of my bottle just to continue to stay hydrated. And then one other thing I didn't get to touch on earlier, I forgot to talk about in the clothing section, was just nature breaks. If you're doing, the really, really long rides, for women, if you're wearing bibs with the straps, the thought is like, oh man, you got to like completely take off all these top layers. And in the winter, that's kind of, you don't want to do that, because then you'll get chilled. The only way to, wearing the bib on the underlayer as the very first layer is not the only way to wear your bibs. You can wear your base layer, your long sleeve jersey, your outer jacket, and then put the bibs over it, and then put your vest on. And that way you only have to take the vest off to take your nature break. I've also started just leaning towards bibless pants and bibless shorts. I just like how easy it is to not have to mess with bib straps, especially if I'm, you know, doing a 125-mile gravel race and I've only got a few seconds, to, you know, a couple minutes to stop at a water break, because I don't like to spend a lot of time at the water breaks. I think that's where a lot of wasted time happens. So I'm always trying to think of, you know, what's the quickest way to take a break. And that can translate into winter riding as well, because you want to keep those breaks short so you don't get chilled. Yeah, and then another thing I want to mention is I found this great little tool. It's called the Shiwi, and it's so that if you're wearing, you know, bibless pants or bibless shorts, it is a tool that women can use to not have to undress to take a nature break. And it has been a lifesaver in these cold weather temperatures. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, just a couple things to chime in. Going one thing off of Meagan said, and then from Larry's. First of all, carrying stuff, you're probably going to want to carry a few more things during the winter than summer. Just taking things off, nutrition you're going to carry around with you, etc. Racks, of course, are nice. I said in my main commuter, I have a rear rack with a bag on the back there. But a lot of folks with the road bikes don't want to do that. One of the new things I just got from my Diverge is one of the bigger saddle bags that kind of roll up in the back. Several companies are making those, and I found out you can fit quite a bit in there to get you through the ride. So I'm looking forward to experimenting with that. And then the other thing about just being out during the winter, I found out just because of my changes in career 10 years ago, I could go out and ride for 3 or 4 hours a day and still get stuff in. I don't have that luxury now. You can get quite a bit of training in on shorter rides. If you plan yourself intervals, et cetera, you can go out for an hour and a half and get quite a bit of work in. So, you know, you don't feel like you have to be out there all day. And sometimes you can make more bang for your buck by doing shorter rides, shorter routes, being safer, staying closer to home, just planning out your routes according to the weather and get it done in less time because you have less daylight, et cetera, during the wintertime.
I would just add, this is not going to do Bill any good in his commute, but you know, if you're commuting in the city and you're riding in the dark in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, you get a flat tire. You don't necessarily want to try to change the flat then. So just my best advice is to know where the closest COTA route is. Of course, all the COTA buses have the bike rack on them. And now, of course, COTA has been free for many months because of the pandemic, but even when they start charging again, you can now load some fare money on your phone. They have an app, and you can put your bike on the rack and get to where you need to go. So it's said, you know, the summertime or afternoon, get a flat. Yeah, you can stop and change it, but I think it's easier to do that and know kind of where that closest bus stop is to hop on the COTA.
It's also nice, you know, we do have cell phones now, and just letting people know that, hey, you know, I'm out during this time, and I'd hate to wake you up at 4 a.m, but just know that I'm there, and if something may happen, I may need to call you, so it's not a total surprise. They know, and you know, don't be ashamed. It's rather be safe and have somebody come and get you than have something silly happen.
Yeah, my husband knows my routes for my daily training. He has access to all the gravel routes that I do. My coworkers even know that, you know, back when I was commuting to work for training, they know if like I didn't show up for a shift, they knew what my route to work was, so that, and that's, you know, that's really important. You don't think about something happening on a daily route or a daily commute until it does. It's kind of like that movie 126 Hours. You know, that guy, he didn't tell anybody where he was going, and then he was stuck. And you think people know where you are, but it's always good to double check that, make sure they actually do know where you're going.
All righty. Well, let's hear a little bit more from Larry. His final little clip here is kind of his takeaway advice for people. So let me give that, get that back going again.
If you had to give one piece of advice to anybody who's maybe sort of sitting on the fence as far as whether to get out there in the winter and whether it's worth the effort, what would you tell them?
You have to enjoy life, and if you're going to live someplace that there's winter, you better find something outside that you enjoy to do. So my wife and I, we also cross-country ski. We just taken up snowshoeing. My wife's out doing a 4-mile run today. I'm going to go out. But it's a mindset. And like someone once said, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just bad clothing choice. And so it's a commitment. What do you want to achieve? Ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? And for me, after 32 years of adult cycling, this is a lifestyle for me. And so I make the commitment that I want to ride every day. One last thought was a couple of years ago when I was training to go to France to do a big event, a 1,200 kilometer event that happens only every 4 years. It's called PBP. Part of my training was I rode every day, and I rode every day from the first day of November of 2018 to like the third day of spring in 2019, over 250 days straight. It wasn't a matter of if I was going to ride that day, it's what do I need to do to ride that day. And at PBP, we had some unexpected really cold temperatures. It got down to 39 degrees. The weather app said it was going to be about 50 degrees at night, and so I was on the bike with me. I had stuff for 50 degrees.
Okay, I'll finish up real quick Larry's story. Our SD card ran out of room, but basically he was on Paris-Brest Paris, and the temperature got cold, and everybody, else a lot of people dropped out, because they just weren't prepared to deal with it. But with all the winter riding and everything he was doing, even though he was just wearing shorts, that's all he had for his legs, and he wasn't prepared for the cold, just being acclimated to the cold as he was. And, like Meagan and others have said, you train for everything. And so he was able to continue on and finish the race. And so the rest of you, and we're kind of creeping past 8:30 here, but we'll open up to questions too. But just kind of do you have any sort of little final nuggets there of advice that you would give?
I'd say, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Meagan. Go
For
ahead.
sure. Okay. The same thing happened to us when we went to Vermont, the Green Mountain Stage Race. I think this was my second or third year on the team. The weather said that it was going to be, beautiful, 60 degrees. And it ended up being 45 and raining the whole weekend. So, and I was not prepared. I had only brought regular cycling clothes. So I think that's what jump-started a lot of my wanting to ride in different types of weather and to be more prepared in that sense. I also find that trying to get myself to ride in the snow is a lot easier when you have a friend and someone who's waiting on you to get there to start the ride. So I'm not a morning person at all. And if I have to go do a cold weather ride and I'm by myself, I will push it out until about noon. And then I'll try to sneak it in before the sun sets. And but if I know I've got a friend waiting at the start of the ride for me, I'll get my butt out of bed and I'll get there and we'll start the ride at 9 and we'll have a great time. And I know that's tough with the pandemic and you have to keep your COVID bubble small. But cycling's great because, especially on gravel, because you can stay 6 feet or more apart and still have a good time and see people. So that's how I've been handling 2021 so far with the cold weather and riding, is using my teammates as motivation to get out there and ride.
I would just add, anything you do is better than doing nothing. And so, do what makes you happy, do what makes you comfortable. Challenge yourself a little bit, but be safe and feel good about what you're doing, and don't feel like you have to, do what other people are doing. Do it what makes you feel good, and it'll make you feel good about yourself. So I've really enjoyed hearing my fellow panelists. Got a lot of great information from them, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invite. This has been and great. And I'll just add to that, it's a whole new world out there. When you go out in the winter, the leaves are gone. It's just a different view, especially on the bike paths. It's right the towpath up here in Akron up to Cleveland, and just the things you see during the winter are totally different. It's another world. So it's fun to get out there. And as you can see, we have 4 different angles of cycling coming here to you, but we're all cyclists, and we all do our thing, and I think it's just important that everybody sees us out there year round, and it's a great time right now for cycling. I mean, the number of bikes being sold, the number of people out there, is hopefully we can continue that.
Okay, well, great. We had some
We had a few questions. Did you want me to read them, or can you see them, Jeff?
I can see them. Let's see, trying to look here to see if there were any questions that came up in the chat during the presentation that didn't get answered somewhere along the way. Let's see, we have a question about keeping feet warm. I think we kind of went over that. And somebody else asked, how do you deal with chills after you stop? Anybody want to take that one?
So if she's asking about stop, like at a stop sign, or because you're having to change your tire, I always have, or change your tube, your inner tube, I always have that like spare windbreaker that I can throw on. And I do it right away before I'm cold, to make, and then when it gets to the single digits, I have this real cool down jacket. It gets real small. I got it at REI, and oh man, do I love that thing. It stays warm. But if she's asking for like after, when you're all said and done, change out of your clothes, because they are going to be, they're more damp than you think they are. And in the moment you can change into something dry, that's going to help keep you from getting into a chilled state. And then I also have a Stanley thermos of chicken noodle soup waiting for me in the car, because that's just exactly what I want when I'm done. So
Good incentive to finish. But, let's see, and then we have one here too about, do you worry about salt damaging your bike components? And it sounds like Larry was pretty much, he had his cheaper, winter bike and wasn't too worried about it. But it sounds like, Jim, you probably do a lot more, cleaning, because yours is a year-round bike. Is there any special things that you do to clean in the winter?
No, I've just got a lot of different size brushes and things that I can try to get, in all the little crevices and things. And said, I think keeping on top of it's the important thing. So taking 10, 15 minutes after a ride daily beats just letting it, build up and then trying to clean it. So, and being the principal, I guess I can do this when I, get to school. I bring my bike in, so and stick it in my office, rather than leave it outside, and then I could look at it all day. And before I'd leave for the afternoon, I'll clean it up.
Well, you also have students that, if they need to be punished, you can just have them clean your bike.
That's right. Detention, bike cleaning.
One of the best pieces of equipment I ever got for cycling is not something that doesn't even get on the road. It's a repair stand. And I probably use that repair stand more for cleaning than I do actually repairs. And just, it doesn't hurt, especially, what you've been out on, just stick the bike up there. And everybody uses different things. I find just a bottle of light Windex and just spray that thing down when you're done. It will take care of a lot of issues that you've been. And the sooner you get to it, the better.
Okay. All righty. I think we're down just a couple dozen people still on the call. So rather than having you raise your hand, I think if you just want to unmute yourself and toss out a question if you've got anything you want to ask our panelists. I know they've been thorough, but surely there must be something else that you can think of.
So back from my cyclocross days, I found that, and this is branching off of Jim's bike cleaning and Bill's bike cleaning thing, is one of those, you can fill it with like a pesticide or like a liquid fertilizer, and you pump the top and it pressurizes it, and then you can spray it, because you have to winterize all your hoses in the winter. So I have found that that has worked really well to kind of like just spray the bike off, both for cyclocross and to get the salt off right away, and then just lubing your chain right away, and making sure that you're cleaning it. Cleaning it on a regular basis will also help the overall life of your chain, but you are going to have to replace your chain more often. I find that I'm taking my bikes to Paradise Garage a little bit more often in the winter, just to get all the gunk cleaned out and all the cables tuned up and derailleurs adjusted and stuff.
Let's see. We had one come in on the chat. What type personalities do the panelists think they personally have? Are you normally a warm weather person, or more cold weather people? I guess, in other words, do you, in order to do this winter riding, do you maybe have to be a cold weather person to begin with, or do you just roll with it?
Yeah, I love the warm weather, and the older I get, the more I understand why people move to Florida when they're old. But I think riding in the winter helps me with, Ohio weather is so gray and just so sometimes so cold. But I think riding helps me get through the winter. And I think it's been mentioned, when you ride all winter, it makes you that much more prepared when the weather gets nice, and you really feel like you can really ride well when the weather gets better. But yeah, I'm not a cold weather person, but it hasn't stopped me.
I think my ideal temperature is like slightly cloudy and somewhere between like 45 and 55 degrees is what I love, because I can still wear my shorts. I can wear, really light long sleeve and no gloves, and not have to worry about overheating or anything. Don't have to worry about the sun beating down on you. If I had a choice between riding in that and riding in the winter, I would choose that. So, but moving out west is not an option right now. So.
Yeah, I actually love the heat. I'd rather be riding in warm weather. And by the way, I actually wear sandals as my bike shoes in the summer. So then you know what? The less clothes you have to deal with and things getting on. I just love it in the summer when you go bang, 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 and you're out the door, rather than what am I going to wear? And it just, to me, is so much easier. The bike maintenance is so much easier. But as Jim said, it's something we deal with, and it does make you more thankful when you do get to the summer.
Okay. Let's see. Somebody asked about lists of companies mentioned during the presentation. I know, of course, we had bar mitts, and we had the Shiwi for the nature, when nature calls. Let's see, what were some of the others? The 45 North for the boots, and Pearl Izumi, for some of the wool layers. And of course, there's lots of different brands for that. Anything else you guys mentioned that somebody would want to know the company name in order to look up that product?
I'm a huge fan of Ibex for all the wool layering. Paradise Garage is my go-to bike shop. They're just down at the corner of High Street and Price, so very centrally located. Kenda Tires is primarily what I run. I don't think I run anything else right now. Barfly Bikes is the mount that I use in the front, and they have a set of front fenders that strap to your forks and rear fenders that strap to your stays, which helps free up. They're all about freeing up space on your bike. What else? Ridge Supply. I use all their socks, their wool socks, their summer socks. Source Endurance is the coaching that I have. Kristen Arnold's actually the nutritionist that I talk to a lot. Eric Peters from Erg Cycling does all my bike fits. Who I'm forgetting someone. Ridge Supply. Oh, Machines for Freedom is the brand of clothing I've been switching to lately. They just have they're very female, you know, and queer oriented with their clothing choices. And they have an excellent customer service and return and exchange program. So if something doesn't fit, they're totally willing to work with you on making sure that that article of clothing does fit when you're all said and done.
And Jim mentioned on the chat that Seagull messenger bags, which are really good, but I guess they locally made, but sounds like they're out of business now. And Jim, you had also mentioned like the rear rear view mirror that you strap onto your wrist. It's just rear vis, like RERVIS. Oh, you're muted.
Rear viz, VIZ.
Yeah. Okay.
And the mirror comes up, and so you can adjust that mirror any way you want, and you can get straps to put on your bicep. I put mine on my wrist, so they're really nice, and for me they're steadier than the ones on your that you put on your helmet.
All right, audience.
By the way, I just wanted to share that the tires I run are the Schwabe Marathons, and the thing I like about them, A, I've never had a flat with them, and B, they do have the reflector around the side of them, as Meagan was talking about having a side reflector. They are right there on the tires, and including the studded tires I have are the Schwabes, and I've been real happy with those.
All righty, audience, any more questions? Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up unless Lisa, Matt and I kind of looked at trying to do breakout rooms, but we couldn't quite figure out the technology. So we may have to do it during our next COP board meeting and do the members as our guinea pigs. But all righty, well, I think we've run about an hour and 45 minutes. So I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. It was I do a little bit of winter riding, but not near what these guys do. So it was, I found it really informative, and makes me want to go outside right now and fire up my lights and go ride in the cold. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.